So, dear viewer, welcome back to Matter of Prose Talk. I'm your host, Jonathan D. Clark.
You're not going to do this every time, are you?
Yes, I'm going to do it all the time.
Oh, God. Okay.
Hello and welcome back. No, I'm not doing that. That's stupid.
Oh, now it's stupid.
Now it's stupid. Because I just don't want to do that voice for, like, the whole show. Especially if, like, this is the first video that they're viewing ever.
I think if you
They're
did
like, you know what, fuck
for the whole show, it would probably work out really well. I don't see a downside to this.
Yeah, that's like saying there's no damn talk list. There would be.
Only if you're cooking bacon at the same time.
Which I would do. Just to spice things up. Like, okay, so about the book. Ha! 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 Oh, so anyway.
You are incorrigible.
Alright. So... Stupid.
Do you need to write it down?
Because I just no, I'm good. I don't have any space. I have to be like this the entire time. Like my arm would be up, holding whatever piece of paper I have. All right. God. All right. So hello and welcome back to Murder of Prose podcast. It's not a podcast. Starting over. Hello and welcome back to Murder of Prose, where every book is innocent till proven guilty. I'm your host, Jonathan D. Clark, and this is my co-host and your dope fiend and narc, E.K. Lloyd Williams.
I'm the dope fiend and the narc.
Yeah, you are both. You're E.K. Lloyd Williams by day, but Sir Helga when you're undercover.
Helga?
I couldn't go with Fred or Bob. I had to. So Helga. It was written during the 70s. Like, it's Cold War. I am Helga. You want to come down to Dark Alley and have good time? Do you come with green card? The word "come" has several connotations.
I don't want to be Helga.
You're Helga. Okay, how about Natasha? You can be...
Why am I Russian?
How about... No. Best of both worlds. Olga.
Oh, fuck you. No.
Fine.
Why am I the dope?
Fine. We'll go with a somewhat Americanized name. You can be Agent Ramona.
Are you whatever the equivalent of Jerry Faven would be?
Yes. You can be... Oh, fuck. What was the name I was gonna have? Agent Mildred.
I feel like you're going out of your way to say rude things for no reason.
Agent... We'll go a little modern. Agent Courtney. Agent Melissa.
I feel like you're just being rude.
I can't use your real name.
I feel like you're choosing the name of every preppy girl I've ever known.
You're in a scramble suit. They don't know.
I wish this was me in a scramble suit. I wish this wasn't my real face. I really do.
Or your real voice.
Or my real voice.
Alright, so today we're reviewing Philip K. Dick's A Scanner Darkly, as EK is displaying with her face. She has the movie poster edition. I have the what?
See,
I think it's like the 2006 Mariner edition. Mine's a little scuffed up because I've had this thing since high school. So
You know what I really didn't like about this book?
what?
I couldn't bend the spine.
You could have with this copy.
Well, I ordered this one online. I couldn't go into a store because somebody. I'm sorry, Gary Oldman. What did you say?
You couldn't go into a Barnes and Noble.
The Barnes and Noble in my town closed.
Oh shit! Really?
Like it closed down a couple years ago.
Oh, so it wasn't even because of COVID.
No, I think it was just before COVID it closed down. Like they went out, and there was a half price books in my town right next to it, and that one closed too. So I had to go online. I'm still trying to crack the spine on this book. This is how sturdy it is. Like I honestly, honest to God.
Anyway, to the review. To Scanner Darkly.
We'll cut that a whole bit out.
Yeah. So how did you feel about the book? So this is your first read.
It was my first.
Because this was your first read. I have read this. This is probably like well within double digits.
I'd read it again. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and I can see where you drew some of your inspiration as a writer.
Mm-hmm. At least early inspiration.
Yeah, early inspiration. It was. I liked it. I mean, this is one of those things where, again, it didn't score in the 90s, but I still enjoyed it, and I would read it again, and I would recommend it. You asked what I thought about the first time I read the book.
Yeah, I know. I was talking to a friend, a mutual writing friend of ours, and she knows it's one of my favorite books. And I was giving, I was kind of explaining our grading process, and I went on to say, I give the plot of a rather low score, and I was like, but it's one of your favorite books, yet you give that such a low score. I'm like, you don't have to it doesn't have to be a perfect book in order for it to be your favorite. It could be it could be a flawed book, which, if you look at my scores, in some areas it is severely flawed.
Deeply flawed, yes. But no, I think when people talk about favorites, especially as far as books and reviews and all that goes, I think by and large they tend to want it to tick a whole bunch of boxes and be perfect in, XYZ form. And that's not how you pick a favorite. You pick a favorite because you just love it. You can feel you can feel it.
Yeah,
Does it make sense?
Yeah, for me it was a few things. Like, for instance, you can feel that for lack of better phrasing and using cliches, you can tell he put his heart and soul into this.
Oh, yeah.
This was a very personal novel for him, so that was okay, the fact that because so many books that I had read throughout high school, it's they just felt lifeless, and this didn't feel lifeless. This felt like it had a pulse.
Yeah, no, it felt you could feel there was a lot of pain in that,
and also I could relate to this book at the time of reading it, not just with what goes on, but also the way he describes the house. That's the house I was living in at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's it's just, I'm like, wow, like, because like for a friend of mine, the book that he felt like was written about his life maybe not necessarily the setting or the plot, but like the dynamic between characters. My friend, for him, it was The Shining. He was Danny, and his dad was Jack, and his mother was, I don't remember Wendy.
I never read Stephen King.
Anyway, because like the dad's an abusive alcoholic, the mom is this, in the book, a gorgeous woman, which his mother is a gorgeous woman, and then you've got Danny, or my friend. So like for him it was The Shining. For me it was this book. Like I felt like, because I was living with people like this, the house was a wreck. I was kind of in between two worlds, like Bob was, because I read this as like right before I started writing, but I had like sort of that idea boiling in my head. So like that's why this is a favorite, because like even though I'm far removed from that part of my life now, it takes me back.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, even though it scores low in quite a few areas in terms of our rubric, it's still a favorite.
Yeah. No, and going back to, like you said, taking you back to where you were, you know, because I've been around these kinds of people before, and these are the kinds of conversations that they have, and these are the types of personalities that they are. And, you know, they're not bad people. They're just seriously flawed.
Yeah.
And they have some dumb fucking conversations, but they're by and large, they're very enjoyable to read. But as far as the rubric, goes.
Yeah. So starting off, just diving right into it, when it came to the plot,
how did I score it?
What was your? How did you score it?
I gave it a 7.
Okay.
Just because like it moved a little slowly.
Okay.
Do you know?
That the slow moving plot affect other areas as well for me. For me personally, I gave it, in terms of plot, I gave it a 4.
So
because
he scored it way lower than I did.
Yeah, which is very surprising. You know, again, like I was telling my friend, like, you know, it scored a 4 out of 10 for plot, and she's like, "But it's your favorite book." I'm like, "Yeah, but the plot, a big portion of the plot, or not even the plot, the story that occurs within the book doesn't serve the plot." Like, there's that scene we were talking about when you first finished it, where the girl is like saying that her boyfriend's going to slash her tires, and and Bob tries to help. Then all of a sudden there's the switch. Like, symbolically, yes, it works to kind of foreshadow what's going to happen to Bob and his friends later. But in terms of just like forward momentum, like keeping, it's not really that interesting. Like,
well, he probably didn't even need to foreshadow it. Like that
No.
change that you see, that shift that you see, even in their interpersonal conversations, that change would have been a lot more dynamic if it had been more of a surprise.
And also, and this is, I can say this for every Dick novel that I've read, when it comes to plot, Dick lacks focus, and so like it starts like, okay, I'm a narcotics agent and I'm going to be, you know, I report things. Oh, I'm reporting on myself, but like that kind of, once the scanners are installed that kind of falls away for a bit unless it's the scene where he happens to be Fred. Like I feel like the scenes where it's Bob, like it's too aimless. Like
Yeah.
Philip K. Dick was just remembering little scenes that took place in his real life. I'm like, oh, I'm going to include this. Oh, I'll have this little scene. Oh, wait, this is a book that has this detective story. Shit, go back to that real quick. And it's like, okay, now we're back to Fred. Like, I felt like he was just trying to create this literary capsule where his friends who died while writing the book,
Yeah.
like it was a way of keeping them alive. And then he was like, oh, fuck, I gotta go back to the cop shit. Okay, or he was doing this. But so like that's why plot is so low for me, because it's like you can, but then again, like I said, every Dick book in terms of plot, it's probably going to score low for me, just because it's not the focus of Dick's books. Like for Dick, it was always about ideas. He was more of an idea writer. So like you essentially, like while you're reading it, like, yeah, of course, you know, since it's fiction, there has to be a story that to kind of keep your everyday reader interested. But like for this one, his main focus was like, you know, identity. Like where does, you know, like the two, like he especially explores the halves of the brain, like which, like there are essentially two people living inside one person and all that stuff. Like, so it deals with identity. And then also it also deals with obviously drug abuse, so like kind of that. Anyway, so yeah, for plot it was a 4 for me. Why? I don't know if you went as in depth. Why was it a 7 for you? Why did it drop 3 points?
It was slow, and there were bits of it that, like you said, they just could have been taken out. But overall, I didn't give it, like you said, he's an idea writer, so I didn't score it that low, just like I didn't score False Cathedrals that low, because the point of the book wasn't the plot. The point of the book was the idea and the breakdown and the stuff that was happening. It went deeper than events.
Yes.
So, like you've said before, there are some books that have no plot, and they can still be good books. So I scored it higher than you did because the plot that there was supposed to be was there. The reason I took those points off was because it took too long to get to some of those points, and some of those points were kind of pointless. As in, they didn't affect the story one way or the other. If you'd taken them out, the story would have been just as cohesive.
Yeah.
That's
and for not to, you know, kind of have not to. I'm not intending to pun here, but like some of his ideas are kind of half-baked.
They are kind of half-baked. He does seem like he was. Well, it does seem like there was, you know, a lot of raw emotion that went into this book. So I think I can forgive the lack of plot. I really can, because it was still engaging. And mostly that was achieved through characters.
Yes.
All of his, I gave him a 10 on characters. All the characters were either colorful and expressive, or they were shadowed and enigmatic.
I gave it 10 as well, just because each character is distinct in their personality. Like, there's no confusion, like, especially if there's no dialogue tags at all. Like, there's no confusing who's saying what.
You will not mistake Barris for Luckman.
No, or Arctor for Freck, or Freck for Luckman, or Donna for anyone else in the book. Like, or even like even minor characters, like, you know, Mike is when Mike's talking.
Yeah. Or even the two nameless informants that were with Fred
Yeah.
While they were all in their scramble suits.
Which
Like those two guys, those
which
two other undercover cops, while they were sitting in the safe house looking at all this footage. Like,
yeah,
you never
which
know their names.
one of them is Mike.
Oh yeah, I forgot that.
It's never said during the whole thing, but
I
like he
really,
does.
I forgot that. Yeah, no, that was.
But yeah,
I had to
even though
take days off.
even though the name's never brought up during like the testing or anything, like it is referred to, and it's like I'm like, oh, fuck you, Mike. Because anyway, but like even the characters that are very similar, like Jerry and Freck,
Still very distinctive.
you could still tell those two apart. Yes, they're like because they're both, you know, going through psychosis, but Freck was more like just jittery and paranoid, as to where Jerry was. Wait, did I say Jerry? Freck is jittery and paranoid, while Jerry was like aggressive.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. No, the distinction between characters and the personality and they were all very well developed. So I mean, and I don't know if there are many books that I can give a 10 for on characters, but this is definitely one of them.
no.
And yeah, no, that's all that I can say about that. I mean, if we go down the list, the next thing is his style, and that definitely informed how he put those characters together.
Yeah.
Because he wouldn't, like, he does how you do, which is the long-winded, rambly sentences that go on for paragraphs at a time. But for some of these characters, it works. Like, for Barris, it works, because Barris is a know-it-all. For
Now,
Freck, it works because he's paranoid. For Fabian, it works because he's losing his fucking mind.
now it doesn't work when it's just when it's those bits where you know that this is Dick talking to you, like when he's explaining the technology,
Yeah.
or going into the psychology of the brain, where he's quoting other sources.
Yeah, that's a little boring.
That I'm not a fan of. Like he could have easily explained, like, okay, this is how the scramble suits work, but he went on to give you the whole like history of how this guy came into it was an accident and whatever, and also he put a little bit of his facial recognition into the scramble suit. So every like 1,000 years,
It's act of Asimov to me.
huh?
That seemed that that tasted like Asimov.
But Asimov does it a little, because Asimov, you know, as opposed to Dick, actually worked in the field of science, as to where Dick was just
No, but much
average
like you with some of your work, I think Dick was trying to emulate someone he respected as a writer.
true.
He probably read some Asimov while he was drawing out.
Probably, yeah. But no, he's always. Then again, well, they were kind of coming up around at the same time, and like Dick's always. This is the most I think he's gone into like detail with the technology, but he always tries to explain how something works. It's like, dude, it's make believe. We don't need to know how the scramble suit works. It's a cool piece of technology that we can just go, well, fuck, I wish that existed.
I don't know. I kind
We
of
don't
like
need to be like, oh, it's this.
I was less interested in explaining brain chemistry, but I was interested in
That
explanation.
was just boring.
Yeah.
That was boring. Every time I've read it, I'm just like, can I skip? I just want to skip this.
No, it wasn't. Again, still an enjoyable book, though. As far as concept and execution,
We didn't give our scores for style.
are you sure we didn't?
I didn't say it mine out loud, and you didn't say yours, no.
Oh.
So before we transition to concept and execution, I gave style a 6.7.
You gave it a 6.7?
Yes.
I gave it a 7.
Okay. So a little.
The aforementioned.
We were close. Yeah, for the aforementioned reason, but also like, and you'd think I'd be a little more forgiving because from what I'm about to say, Dick was never a stylist when it came to his writing. Like, he didn't try to go with the lyrical prose. He was very much a straightforward, like, accessible writer, which is funny. We're probably gonna cut this out. Is the fact that, like, usually when you read an author, the prose is more eloquent than how the author actually speaks. With here, it was the reverse. Like, you would think, okay, if you're not looking for the ideas and you don't capture the ideas, you'd be like, okay, this guy's a very simple-minded man, because his word choice isn't the most articulate and all this other crap. But then when you hear him speak in interviews, it's like, are you dumbing yourself down because you don't think your readers are that smart? Like, what are you doing?
That's a very real possibility.
Like, what are you doing, Phil? Like, come on. All right, so going to concept and execution. How did you feel about both?
In my initial score, I gave concept a 4.5 and execution a 4, but I would like to amend that. I would like concept to be a 3.8.
Okay.
And I would like execution to be a 4.4.
Okay, so for me, concept gave it a 2.5, but for execution, a 4.6. Because when it comes to the concept,
God damn it!
So, as brought up in this review, I grew up on detective literature, and as a detective novel, this is not a good one.
Does this count as a detective novel? You should have told me.
It does. It counts as a detective because Fred is a narc. He's a detective undercover, trying to bust the dad who is himself, supposedly. And the mystery that they're trying to solve is, where are the drugs coming from?
Okay. I still give it a 3.8
Like,
and a 4.4, which does change the nature.
But execution, the reason why I score it higher than the concept is because even though it's essentially billed as a science fiction detective novel, I don't see it as that, which is why concept is low. So I'm like, even though this is that typical detective, not typical, but it's got the detective story, I don't view it as it. I view that, the idea of identity and how the brain works and all this other stuff, and how does the brain work into identity and all this, essentially just the concept of what makes you and not someone else. That's why I'm like, okay, so the execution of that is brilliant. especially as you get near the end of the book, and Bob slash Fred has completely forgotten who he is.
You are cutting out horribly.
We
He
were
had
on,
to switch because JD kept freezing.
we were on concept and execution. I feel like we kind of said what we wanted to say with that one. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, I think we were. Yeah, I think we were on concept and execution. I gave it a 3.8 and a 4.4.
I gave it a 2.5 and a 4.6.
I can't do math very well, but I think that adds up to an 8.2.
Yeah, that's an 8.2. And mine's a 7.1.
So
And like I said in the previous part before we cut to phones, it's simply the fact that like this is billed as a detective novel, but it's not a very good one.
yeah, no, it to
But
me the concept, yeah.
But if you take it for what it is under the surface, not even under the surface, he's very upfront about what he's talking about. That execution's pretty well. But the concept, like, it's not good.
Yeah, the concept, I mean, the execution was he did all right. I felt like he could have done a little bit better. In as far as just taking out some of the stuff that he didn't like, some of the stoner conversations. Like, yeah, they were funny, but they went on, and it wasn't really necessary. It does give you an idea of what it's like to be in the mindset of a stoner, but as far as necessity within the book, yeah, I don't think it was all that meaningful.
Yeah.
Sort of overplayed. He
overplayed.
labored the point, I suppose.
So now when it comes to the structure of the book, I gave it a 10.
If I tell you I gave it a 6.5, are you going to launch into a lecture about why it's a 10 and not a 6.5?
Before I broaden your mind, why a 6.5?
6.5?
I want to know why you are an idiot and and just know I'm going to pull a Crowder. Is it Crowder? Louder with Crowder? Or like where he makes a statement that says change my mind. I'm like, I'm going to change your mind on this one. On why it should be at least
Okay, no, change my
7 to an
mind.
8. Okay, so from the beginning of the book, you start off with, while it's a tragic scene in retrospect, it's a fun scene reading it because you're dealing with Jerry and the bugs. And it's entertaining for you because you're on the outside. If you were Jerry yourself, it'd be a nightmare. Now, the structure of the book, as you see, like, it's a very funny book, but it's also tragic. These are not dicks. Anyway, although it could be because we read a dick novel. Anyway, ha ha ha. I'll do it this way from now on.
Yeah. That doesn't make it any better.
My arms are stiff. What's going on? Anyway, so it's a funny book, but it's also a tragic one. And it starts up. I mean, you could say it's tragic, but it's also funny. And those two aesthetics kind of bounce back and forth. But as you continue throughout the book, the funny starts to kind of dwindle, and the tragedy starts to take the main stage. And if that is not the perfect way to set up a book about drug abuse, I don't know what is, because drugs start off fun. Then you come down. Then you take a little more and you get back to that fun side. Of course, you come back down, but then you take more. But eventually, as Barris states to Freck, tolerance develops. And the ability to obtain that level of fun becomes harder to achieve. And eventually, getting high, stoned, whatever you want to call it, becomes more of a burden and a chore to reobtain what you once had in terms of that fun, but that fun is now gone. And it becomes your drug use becomes an addiction and more of a nightmare, to where eventually you lose yourself. And just viewing that whole comedy and tragedy bit, and what happens to Bob, or Bob / Fred / Bruce, it is the perfect analogy of just what is going on in Bob's mind.
So, I was going to tell you this the other night when we were talking about it, but I'll just tell you now. Initially, I did actually give Structure a 10, but I told you it was a 6.5 because you had a whole lecture prepared and I wanted to hear it.
Really? You little bitch. You little fucking bitch. I feel used. You are Donna to my Bob.
Because I knew you said you had reasons. Like, as soon as you said, how did you score Structure? And if you scored it low, I have an argument as to why it should be higher. I was like, well, I'm just going to score it low then because I want to hear. But I agree. It's a 10 for Structure. It's perfectly done. And it's the perfect sort of musical composition as far as mapping drug abuse. I agree 100%.
You fucking bitch. I will never trust you ever again. You'll be like, hey, so like there's this whatever, it's really good, or whatever, it's really bad. I'm like, fuck you for Scanner Darkly. No, you should really try this barbecue. And like, if I ever go to Missouri, I'm like, no, this barbecue is really good. I'm like, no, it's not. Because you said something was not shitty, but not that great. So the fact that you're saying this barbecue is really fucking good, fuck you. You eat it. You eat it and get food poisoning. And
you get me on shit all the time, okay? But no, I do agree with you. Structure's a 10. Very easily. He did knock it out of the park. And I can see why anyone would like it as much as I do. Like, even for the fault in the concept and execution, and even for the fault in the plot and in some of the style, it's still, the characters are perfect, and the way he uses them to tell the story is perfect, and the way he puts it all together to show that, the rise and the fall and the rise and the fall. It is a little bit like a symphony.
Yeah. There's crescendos, and there's, not quite a climax. Like, there's false crescendos, and they're kind of breaks apart, and then it builds back up again. And I wouldn't even say you get what would you count as the climax to this piece?
The climax,
because I want to see if it's the same.
I would say the climax is when he's in Hank's office.
Yes, and he's basically I'm who?
Yeah.
I'm Bob Barker. That's the climate, and then you essentially, you start to kind of slow down again.
You get that descending, and then that level.
Yeah,
That's
This was a, even though its style, like it's not the prettiest symphony, but it's a well composed symphony.
Oh yeah.
Like it's not the prettiest, but it's every note is in its right place.
It's
Every note that he put in is in
it
its right.
vaguely reminds me of, and this is the only one I can think of off the top of my head, but Danse Macabre. Have you heard that one?
Yes.
It reminds me of that, where it's, it starts out very, very rough.
Uh-huh.
And then it sort of builds into something cohesive and coherent, but interspersed throughout, you've got this just sort of almost grating sound on the violin. And that's kind of what it reminds me of. There's a couple of others that I'm sure I'll think of after we're done recording. But yeah, no. Structure's a 10. How did you feel about diction?
I gave it a 9.
I gave it an 8.
Okay. So for me, again, Dick's not a stylist in any way when it comes to his writing.
No.
Where I dock him, and of course you could say you could make the argument like, well, it was written in the 70s and he was using the lingo at the time, like Foxy and
Chick.
Yeah, and all that. He could have used something a little more universal, something that the quote-unquote the straights would use, like instead of saying Foxy, maybe like she was hot or sexy, because like those terms are still used today. Like, as to where Foxy is never going to make a comeback.
I wish it would.
I'm glad it hasn't.
I really wish it would.
I would hate to be called, especially because Donna calls Bob Foxy. Like, where's something Foxy?
You are Foxy.
Like, shut the fuck up.
You are, though.
No, I'm not. You shut your mouth, Maggie. We didn't ask you.
That was kind of why I graded him down, was because some of the what's the word I'm looking for? Slang.
Slang, yeah.
Some of the slang, I understand why he might not have tried to use a forward slang.
Like a futuristic.
Or a future slang or whatever. Because if that's when you're writing it and that's when the book is being published, to acquaint your audience with the slang, you have to like break down what it means. You have to get overly descriptive as to what, like, how it applies. And you have to do that consistently, and you have to consistently use it in all of those situations. Like, you have to, it gets to be inorganic. It doesn't really feel like a real conversation. I understand why he didn't do it, but I kind of wish he had used less of it.
Because even though it's supposed to take in what, at this
Or
point,
at least alternated, because it's not all, like, you don't, even today, we don't have the same slang for every, like, it alternates.
like I doubt kids these days are using the term like chillax or bomb or dank to describe things.
No, I don't know. I don't know what they're using.
I don't know what they're using, but I can guarantee you they're not using dank or bomb or radical or they're like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm chillaxing. Like, they're not using those.
What are they using?
My son's 3. He's not a teenager. I don't know what he's using.
But you have all the followers on Twitter, so you should be hip
Yeah,
to
I'm not
say,
following teenagers. I'm sure I'm following like people in their younger 20s, but
why
like
don't you have a TikTok?
I actually
Mr. With
have
it.
one, but I don't use it.
So you treat TikTok the same way I treat Twitter, which is to say you don't use it even though you have it there.
I have it there. I don't use it. I don't even know how to make a video on it.
I don't have one.
But the issue that I have with him using the slang of the time that this published is this is supposed to take place in 1994, which at the time was futuristic. But using that slang dates the novel. Like even like in a Clockwork Orange, they use slang that wasn't slang of the time, and while that slang never came to be real within the context of the novel, in a sense, it becomes timeless. Like you don't know really when it takes place.
No, I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying, and I agree with why you docked it. I'm just saying I understand why he didn't feel like that was something he should try to do. But this was also a guy who, at the time, was getting clean.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's going to be some limitations to what he can do, at least for the time being.
Yes.
Formatting. How did you like the formatting?
I only docked him 0.6 points, so a 9.4. And that's only because of like the paragraphs where I get why he did it to like sort of differentiate, like, okay, this is where I'm quoting an outside source. I get why he did it, which is why it's not only docked 0.6 points. It just, to me, it doesn't look exactly clean, especially when he like starts doing the German bits.
Yeah, that was why I docked him too, but I think it probably annoyed me more than it annoyed you because I gave him an 8.9.
It gets more annoying in the book after this. Because he uses it way too much in that book. Yeah, 9.4 for me. It's not poorly formatted. It has those moments where I'm just like even when when it says like if I'd had known it was harmless, I would have killed it myself. Where he does like this like centered all caps, but it's smaller font size. Like it reads more like something engraved on someone's tombstone than a quote that everyone has said at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, those were really the only bits that just threw it off. And in some places you end up skipping it entirely and trying to just move on.
Yeah.
Especially the German bits. If you can't read German or if you don't know what he's saying, then
or if you don't have Google Translate on hand.
Yeah.
So like any time before the internet became, reliable,
it was probably much more annoying.
If you got to those parts, it'd be like it's and he's not the only author who does other languages in books. Like Nabokov used some French. in Lolita. So, like, if you read those books and you didn't have a knowledge of French or German or whatever language they use, you'd be like, okay.
But see, in Nabokov, when was Lolita written?
1955?
Oh, really?
Hmm.
Because at the time, that was something that would have been considered part of a classical education, and
Yeah.
it's been
Yeah, back then, and even kind of in the 70s, people kind of took foreign language classes a little more seriously than we do nowadays.
nowadays people treat it like an easy credit, and it's like,
Yeah. So, and that's why in Arcadia I chose Russian, because it doesn't even use the same alphabet as English. So you really have to work for your translation if you want to get the joke that I put in there.
well,
The fact that the Russian army used "you've got to fight for your right to party" as a passcode to get into a underground section of a base.
that does sound like something the Soviets would do.
Yes.
Well, you
Fight for your right to party.
okay, so formatting, and now,
I was about to ask you, how did you feel about the length of this book?
I would have liked a more sound conclusion, and I would have liked some bits of it to be shorter, but overall, I mean, I gave it a 7.
I gave it a 9 for the same reasons. I'm just a little more forgiving in that regard, because you said you wanted this to be longer but shorter in some areas.
I wanted a more solid ending. I don't mind open-ended books.
Yeah.
The way this one ended, I don't mind them. But it would have tied it up much more. There would have been much more satisfaction if we'd seen him trying to explain the flower to his new friends.
Yeah. It kind of cut off a little too soon. But like you said, like there are some areas that could have been cut. I gave it a 9
I gave it a 7.
for that, for similar reasons. But then again, like wanting this to be a longer book, marginally longer, is saying quite a bit, because I'm pretty sure other than Valis, this is his longest work. Like his novels are typically shorter than this.
Huh.
So like
This is my first PKD.
But I'm glad you decided to say that instead of saying this is your first dick, because
Well, we've already been down that road. I didn't like that one very much.
but yeah, no, length is just a 9 for me, just because.
And this first dick was a satisfying length. The other first dick was not. As far as quotability goes, I gave him a 6.
You only found 3 that hit you?
I only found 3.
So this is a 10 for me, and then some by 1. So you could say that, if we were counting extra points towards this is a 12-inch dick.
I like, since we're going through, I liked the bit on, I don't know if we have the same page count, but it starts at the bottom of page 258 and goes over to page 259. God's MO, he reflected, is to transmute evil into good. If he is active here, he is doing that now, although our eyes can't perceive it. The process lies hidden beneath the surface of reality and emerges only later. To perhaps our waiting heirs, paltry people who will not know how the dreadful war we've gone through and the losses we took, unless in some footnote in a minor history book they catch a notion, some brief mention with no list of the fallen.
That was one of that was one of mine, but it ended. We don't have the same page. Mine is on 268, and it stays on that page.
Yeah. No, I really liked that one.
Although I would add the first 3 sentences of the next paragraph. There should be a monument somewhere, he thought, listing those who died in this, and worse, those who didn't die, who have to live on, past death. Like,
Yeah.
that was one of my quotes. Since we started at the end of the book, do you want to do your other 2?
By and large, they're at the end of the book.
Okay, mine were pretty scattered throughout the novel. There was that one, The God's MO. That was one of mine. Then mine was at the end of chapter 15. There we go. The living, he thought, should never be used to serve the purposes of the dead. But the dead, he glanced at Bruce, the empty shape beside him, should, if possible, serve the purposes of the living.
That's a good one.
It is out of the 6 quotes that I picked, because I was saying that it's a funny and also sad reflective book. I think 5 out of the 6 are sad, and only one of them is funny. Like, out of my quotes.
What's the funny one?
The funny one is page 29 of my book, because we don't have the same page numbers. Alright, so in Southern California, it didn't make any difference anyhow where you went. There was always the same McDonald's burger place over and over, like a circular strip, and turned past you as you pretended to go somewhere. And when finally you got hungry and went to the McDonald's burger place and bought a McDonald's hamburger, it was the one they sold you last time, and the time before that, and so forth, back to before you were born. And in addition, bad people, liars, said it was made out of turkey gizzards anyhow. They had by now, according to their sign, sold the same original burger 50 billion times. He wondered if it was to the same person. Life in Anaheim, California was a commercial for itself, endlessly replayed. Nothing changed. It just spread out farther and farther in the form of neon ooze. What there was always more of had been congealed into permanence long ago, as if the automatic factory that cranked out these objects had jammed in the on position. How the land became plastic, he thought, remembering the fairy tale, how the sea became salt. Someday, he thought, it'll be mandatory that we all sell McDonald's hamburger as well as buy it. We'll sell it back and forth to each other forever from our living rooms. That way, we won't even have to go outside. Given the state of the world now, that just hits funny for me. Like, it didn't hit funny the first 10 or so times I read this, but I'm just like, we're there. Yay, Grubhub. We're not sponsored, by the way.
No. No, if we were, do you think we'd be doing this with shitty cameras?
But yeah, no, it's just like, that way we won't even have to go outside. It's like, we don't. Good on you, Phil, for looking to the future.
think my next one was on page 243. Again, when he's in
New Path.
when he's Bruce.
When he's in New Path.
Yeah, and he says, I think it's Mike speaking. Imagine being sentient but not alive. Seeing and even knowing but not alive. Just looking out. Recognizing but not being alive. A person can die and still go on. Sometimes what looks out at you from a person's eyes maybe died back in childhood. What's dead in there still looks out. It's not just the body looking at you with nothing in it. There's still something in there, but it died, and it just keeps on looking and looking. Can't stop looking. That one hit for me in a number of ways.
Okay, while you're finding yours, I'll read off my next one.
Yeah, do that.
The pain, the cut in his scalp, so unexpected and undeserved, had for some reason cleared away the cobwebs. It flashed on him instantly that he didn't hate the kitchen cabinet. He hated his wife, his 2 daughters, his whole house, the backyard with his power mower, the garage, the radiant heating system, the front yard, the fence, the whole fucking place and everyone in it. He wanted a divorce. He wanted to split. So he had, very soon. And entered, by degrees, a new and somber life, lacking all of that. Probably he should have regretted his decision. He did not. That life had been one without excitement, with no adventure. It had been too safe. All the elements that made it up were right there before his eyes, and nothing new could ever be expected. It was like, he had once thought, a little plastic boat that would sail on forever, without incident, until it finally sank, which would be a secret relief to all. But in this dark world where he now dwelt, ugly things and surprising things, and once in a long while a tiny wondrous thing spilled out at him constantly. He could count on nothing.
Why did you like that one so much?
That's married life for you. I hate to tell you, kids who plan on finding that person they love and marrying them, marriage gets boring. It could be decades from now. It could be 5 years, if less, where you kind of become, to quote a film that I like, you kind of become like the dining dead, where like all you're doing is just eating, getting up, doing your daily grind, going home, eating dinner, going back to sleep, getting up. Like, you could say that you don't have to be married to get that, but like not being settled down with someone, you're given more opportunity to meet new people. Like, there can be a new wondrous thing out there, a new connection, as to where if you're in that sort of domestic lifestyle, you've got the same person till death do you part. It resonated with me very strongly.
No, maybe he felt the same way.
Possible.
But my last one was on page 234. It's when Donna is taking Bob, because he's still Bob then, when she's taking him up to New Path.
Yeah.
And they pull off to the side of the road and he's having withdrawals and he's throwing up everywhere. And she says, it may take 1,000 years or longer than that, but that day will come and all the balances will be set right. Maybe, like Tony Amsterdam, you have seen a vision of God that is gone only temporarily. Withdrawn, she thought, rather than ended. Maybe inside the terribly burned and burning circuits of your head that char more and more even as I hold you, A spark of color and light in some disguised form manifested itself, unrecognized, to lead you, by its memory, through the years to come, the dreadful years ahead. A word not fully understood, some small thing seen but not understood, some fragment of a star mixed with the trash of this world, to guide you by reflex until the day.
What about that one? Did
Um,
you?
Because it's like it's that human condition to even in despair that you do kind of just grope around for something hopeful to hang on to. And, in Tony Armstrong's case, that was, he thought he saw God.
Yeah.
And in Bob's case, that was Donna. Yeah, that's why it struck me, because, and that's something that I think that a lot of people would be able to identify with, because we've all had those times of desolation. And even now, we just, everything seems so hopeless that sometimes it is just a memory or an idea of a memory, something that's just so small and so far away. What?
You and I picked different quotes, but they have the same sentiment, in my opinion. Like you're talking about, like trying to grasp onto that memory, just something to give you a little bit of hope. And I just think that's funny that you like the next quote, the last quote that I'm going to share. It's like they have the same sentiment, which you could say that this whole book can be summarized as just is having that memory to have some kind of, like, because this is basically all just Philip K. Dick's memories that he's writing about, that he's fictionalized.
Right.
And so I just thought it was funny that, you're talking about trying to find a memory to latch on to. And my final quote that I'm going to share, it's the same sentiment, but it's just written in a different viewpoint. It's not Donna talking, it's Bob, and yours is a little more hopeful. Mine is a little more cynical. So it's kind of like opposite sides of the same coin. Like you've got this hope, but then you've got this pessimism. And I'll just read mine real quick, and then we can continue on with this memory bit for a little while longer. Within something's very eyes, within the sight of something, which, unlike little dark-eyed Donna, does not ever blink. What does a scanner see? He asked himself. I mean, really see. To the head, down into the heart. Does a passive infrared scanner like they used to use, or a cube-type hollow scanner like they use these days, the latest thing, see into me, into us, clearly or darkly? I hope it does, he thought, see clearly, because I can't any longer these days see into myself. I see only murk. Murk outside, murk inside. I hope, for everyone's sake, the scanners do better. Because, he thought, if the scanner sees only darkly the way I myself do, then we are cursed. Cursed again, and like we have been continually, and will wind up dead this way, knowing very little and getting that little fragment wrong too. Like, in a sense, the scanners are a document to his life. Because, as he says, he can't see himself anymore. He only sees murk. But the scanners, he's hoping, can do better to document what's going on. But it's kind of like a home video where, like, you're filming it, like, oh, it'll be a memory that we remember ages from now. But then, like, you look back, and, like, the memory that you remember isn't what's on the videotape. So then you kind of start to question, like, well, which is wrong?
Right.
So it's the memory, but it's like even with video, I don't want to say evidence, but in this case, it's evidence.
There's a part of you that
There's-
feels
there's
like
no-
memory.
There's still no sense of clarity because even though, because like with memory, there's sentiment, there's emotion to it. As for with a videotape, it's detached. You're just seeing the documented footage. So like there's the psychic distance between you and the videotape and your memory, where
Yeah.
it's like you kind of go, well, where does it cross over? And what if they're both? What if neither one is correct in a sense? Because you've got the sentiment, but you've got the more objective truth as opposed to the subjective truth, and it's like
And even in that, like, objectivity can only capture so much.
Yeah.
It has its limits. Like not even just because it can't see into your mind or into your heart, but because it can. Cameras can also be fooled.
Yeah.
They can.
Because, for instance, like the camera has a very small focus as to where your memory, like something like there could be something in your memory that was off screen. The screen's not going to capture that, so like there could be a reaction on the screen, but you're not seeing what caused it.
Yeah.
And so there's always that hint of like, well, especially if a stranger is viewing it. So like, let's just say Fred and Bob weren't the same person. If Fred saw Bob react to something off scanner, he would have no idea why he's reacting the way he is, but Bob would know. Bob would remember, I reacted because of this. Ferris did something stupid. So it's like...
I mean, that is what happens, essentially.
Go ahead.
That is what happened. As he's going through watching the holotapes, that is essentially how it ended up happening, where they're sitting around doing these things, and Fred can't figure out why they're sitting around like this, having these conversations. And it's because of all this stuff that Bob is doing off script.
Yeah.
The things that he's thinking about, the contemplations that he has, him knowing that he's being spied on and sort of using that to fool himself.
Yeah. But yeah, that's why, like, digging a little into like personal me, I'm not a fan of like photographs, like taking pictures of like, oh, we went to the coast. I'm more a fan of having the memory because like the picture only captures one element. As for the memory, you can recall, olfactory, the smell of the ocean. You can recall things that a picture won't. So that's why, like, he's putting all this hope into the scanners when, if anything, the scanners will probably betray him more than save.
Well, I think people go to those, the scanner, the camera, the picture, because they do forget, and you touched on this a little bit in False Cathedrals, where, were it not for a photograph, I wouldn't remember what somebody even looked like. I can't remember how they sounded. I can't remember the sound of their laugh. I can't remember what they smelled like. And if it weren't for that, then this person would fade from memory altogether.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, we've sort of, it's become a means of immortalizing ourselves, but, what it's meant for, what it was meant to do, was to immortalize the people that we love. Yeah. Those memories that we lose, those memories that could be that bright spot in the really, really dark day that keeps us going until that moment can, not necessarily be recreated, but that atmosphere that we want to create is something that's a goal that we can eventually achieve.
Yeah.
So anyway,
now
he does have a way of saying things that make you, like, they are in a way universally applicable, and they do make you, Dick, that's something that he does really well. He just makes you reflect a great deal on your own life and on your own experiences, and introspection is not a bad thing.
No, not like it to quote you, it can take you down some pretty dark places. That's exactly like you said, paraphrasing a bit. But sometimes, and I feel like a lot of people flee from those dark moments, like those dark periods of their history.
Yeah.
And
some people do, and that's not necessarily a good idea. Trying to pretend that it never happened, trying to avoid having to deal with that, invariably will cause greater damage, because it's the thing that's eating away at you.
Yeah. I mean, and in that sense, like, even up to false cathedrals, you could say Philip K. Dick has been an influence on me, because since he caused you to reflect on darker moments of life, I essentially have tried to do the same throughout my fiction, even as my style progressed beyond Dick's.
Dick's?
Yes. I got past the bukkake stage.
I shouldn't do that.
Yeah, that'll just be the clip for the
closest. It's the closest thing to slutty that I can do.
Now, how did you feel with the overall satisfaction of this book?
It was an 8.8, Dick.
Wow. Okay. This is your first time reading it too. Like, I'm at a 9.8. Like, I'm a good,
You're a good inch. You're a good inch further along that saddle.
Yeah. Riding bareback. This is your first time reading it. Like, this is like a constant reread for me. Like, I at least read this once.
I will reread this.
Like, and I feel bad, like, starting you off with this one, because this is about as good.
I feel bad starting you off.
This is about as good a Dick as you're gonna get.
I feel bad starting you off with an 8.8, Dick, because they're all 6.2s and 5.9s from here on out.
Yeah, like, there might be.
That would disappoint any girl.
Who knows? You might actually enjoy Flow My Tears a little bit better. Who knows? But, like, in terms of depth,
I think I'll stick with the 8.8, Dick.
Did you give any extra credit for this one? I mean, I'm gonna probably assume yes, because
it was a full
10. Huh?
It was a full 10.
Yeah, full 10 for me, because I'm like, you and I have been talking, like, how the quotes have resonated with us, and I'm pretty sure, like, this is a very,
this absolutely fills all the requirements for that, which was to be thought-provoking, or which is something that you can take away, and that will influence how you look at something, or maybe could make you reconsider how you feel about something later on down the road. Like, it's not just gonna be something that you can put down and forget.
It's not. It's not a Vonnegut.
No.
Right. So, rating this with overall points, without the extra credit, it's 85. But with the extra credit, it is 95 missing gears out of 100.
95 missing gears out of it. How the fuck do you even come up with these?
The missing gears from the bike, where they have like, oh, there's missing gears. And
So, like, but do you, like, just pick stuff at random?
I just pick whatever I just pick a random thing from the book. I could have done 95 tabs of substance D out of 100, but 95 missing gears out of 100.
95, well, they're all, okay. I scored it 90.9 with the extra credit, 80.9 without the extra credit.
Okay.
Out of 100.
Out of 100,
Both
yes.
cases. And I know that makes me seem like I have no personality and I'm very, very dry in a lot of ways. But in all actuality, I just, it's true.
If you were to recommend this book to someone, and they were like, and if they asked you, well, what's this book like? Any comparable titles you would compare it to? Like, if you liked this, no? Okay.
No, this is, I mean, it's far too unique.
Yeah.
Because you're basically like, the closest we could probably get would be the Departed.
Yeah, that's a movie.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said the closest we could probably get, and that doesn't really count. Because this is about a guy who's losing his goddamn mind.
Yeah.
How would you sell somebody on this book?
When it comes to books, I can't think of anything. I would have to agree with you. With The Departed is probably the closest you can get to a comparable title, even though it's a film. There's no other. There's no one like Dick. Even people who try to emulate him, you can't even say, like, oh, if you like early Jonathan Lethem, because he wrote science fiction novels sort of like Philip K. Dick, but Philip K. Dick did it better. Yeah, no. There's no one to really compare him to.
He's just very unique. That's how, if I were trying to convince someone to read this book, and essentially that is what we're doing here, I would suggest it because it's a book that it contains a lot of themes that everyone is intimately familiar with. Losing your friends in things that are preventable. In some cases, losing your mind because you have to live two separate realities. And the effects that drugs have on people you know and love. The sort of emotional divorce that law enforcement has to go through.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have complained about it, and a lot of people have had to deal with it. But there's this emotional divorce that you have to go through when you're working in law enforcement, because you can't be emotionally invested in what you're doing, because what you're doing is sometimes really, really gritty. Yeah. So those are things that a lot of people have experience with, but then also there's that aspect of it where it just stays with you, and it makes you reconsider yourself in a way. And that's a long-winded way to sell it, but I am not a salesman or a saleswoman.
Or a poet. That's
True.
referring to SCAD.
Yes, I know, but in this case, it's almost mostly literally true.
So for our next review, do we want to tell people what we're doing next, or?
I can't tell people what we're doing next because I'm using it as a stand for my phone.
All right, so I will. Mine's available. Mine's the uglier cover, though, so I apologize. Our next book, keeping in vein with science fiction, we're going to be reading. This time it'll be a first read for both of us instead of just me forcing Dick on her.
In many ways, I wouldn't complain.
We're going to be reading Ratner's Star by Don DeLillo. This is only. There's an element of science fiction in White Noise, but it's not that big. But this is his only novel that's predominant. Okay, so we're going to be reading Ratner's Star next. If you liked this video, which you probably didn't, leave a like or dislike, because it doesn't matter, because it helps us in the algorithm either way. And then,
we're not going to ask you to comment or subscribe.
We won't say, hey, you should subscribe, but if we get past 10, I might undo a button.
We're never going to get past 10 now.
Well, no, we're not. Okay, if we don't get
unless it's all like other.
Eventually, it'll just be like, if we don't get past 10 and we stay here, I'm just going to be doing this from now on, which this might be more entertaining.
It might be.
Yeah, don't subscribe. I actually kind of like this because now I can't see what's going on and I don't have to look at my face.
And he can't see my face either, so he is fucking.
Yeah, this is gold. No one subscribed.
To be honest, I would be pleased too.
In fact, unsubscribe.
All 6 of you.
All 6 of you, yes. Anyway, this has been Murder Pros. We did this, and this was Scanner Darkling. Get the fuck out.